Hello, everyone, and welcome to MF TV Movie Club Now Playing. I'm Beth, and I'm one half of the Made for TV Movie Club podcast, where we talk about amazing TV movies from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and some not so amazing. Here on YouTube, however, we mix things up with reviews of current movies and TV shows, plus interviews with people currently working in the entertainment field today. Our podcast celebrates the classics of the 20th century TV and film, but this channel lets us share our love for the modern entertainment world and the people creating it today. Without further ado, let's get started. So, today I want to talk about the new Frankenstein movie, which I was so lucky to be able to see in a little independent one screen theater down in Milwaukee on Valete Street called the Times Theater. It's a nonprofit theater that has been around for a very, very long time. They've just redone it. It's beautiful. It does not have surround sound, and I'm actually really glad for that because I feel like the movie might have been a little bit too much sensory wise if it had been. So before I talk any further, I just want to mention that there are going to be spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, then maybe this isn't the review for you. But first, I just wanted to share my copy of Frankenstein, which I have recently reread. I was on a podcast where I talked about it, and so I have a lot of notes that I've taken over the years on my copy and about Frankenstein. I also was really fortunate to be able to see the musical this winter. The Skylight Music Theater did it in Milwaukee, and it was really beautiful production, and it followed the story really, really closely. So maybe you know where I'm going with this. I want to start off by saying that I understand that when a novel is adapted to film, that sometimes there are changes that are made in the film, and I'm not opposed to those. I think actually in some cases it's necessary because writing a written word story is very, very different than production or a movie or TV or any other kind of film where you're watching the story. So having said that, I'm not opposed to when that happens. However, I did have a problem with this adaptation, and a lot of it is because of the fact that this didn't feel like Frankenstein to me in almost any way. The story was so different that it's surprising. I actually went back and looked on IMDb because I wanted to make sure that this was like not a completely new story, but this is a Guillermo del Toro production. He wrote, directed, produced it, but he does give Mary Shelley credit in the as a writer. So we know that it is a version or an adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. However, it is a very, very, very loose adaptation. It's possible that it is an adaptation from earlier films. I don't know because I've never actually seen another movie based on Frankenstein. But I can tell you that it's very, very different from the novel itself, which was a little problematic because it strayed so much from Mary Shelley's message that I don't think that it really was the same story at all. So once the movie ended, a friend of mine who I was with, who I had read the book with, it was from my book club, and there were several of us from the book club that were there. Most of us had read the novel. My son had not, and he loved the movie. So, I know a lot of people have. It's gotten great reviews, and there's a lot of really good things about the movie, which I'll talk about. However, she looked at me and she said, "Oh my gosh!" Very early on, I thought I might be punked. She's like, "Did we read? Like, did this happen? Did it not?" So, um, it was a little confusing for her as well. Uh, Oscar Isaac plays Victor Frankenstein. Jacob Eldori plays the creature. Christopher Waltz plays Harlander, who is Victor Frankenstein's benefactor. And Mia Goth plays Elizabeth. Also, the character William Frankenstein plays a large role in the film as well. So, for those of you who don't know, the novel Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is a Gothic horror novel published in 1818. So, it is quite an old story. And there were a lot of things I really did like about the film. One was the cinematography was just absolutely beautiful. I found it to be so almost breathtaking at times. I thought the costuming was incredible. The the women were dressed so beautifully, and the men, and the colors were actually very stark, even though it wasn't a colorful film per se, but there was a lot of color in particularly Elizabeth's outfits. And at one point, the first time we actually see her, she's wearing this beautiful, beautiful gown, and she has feathers that come down around here. And a friend of mine who was with us, who owns a haberdashery, a hat shop, was just, because it was so beautiful. And another friend of mine who is Kristen, who's been on the show, she loved the costuming, and she is in fashion, so she is a little more knowledgeable about that than I am. So I did love that about it. I thought that some of the other things I really liked about it was some of the realism. Like, there's a scene where Victor Frankenstein walks over a puddle of blood that's in the street to get into his, I think it's his office or his whatever building he works in. So I thought that was really good. It felt very realistic, and like just this kind of red puddle of blood, and you almost can smell it. It's so dark and so scary, but probably really realistic to the times, right? When you think about people who were sort of slaughtering animals or doing that kind of work, where was the blood going to go, right? You're in a shop in the middle of town; it has to go somewhere, and so probably in the streets is actually where it happened. Although I don't know, I'm not a historian, but it felt very real to the time that the movie was set in. So um, that I very, very much loved. I thought the acting was incredible. I thought they did a great job with what they had. They really understood their roles. They really portrayed their roles, and I thought that was really interesting. The other thing I was not expecting to really enjoy about the film was the creature himself. As I said, it's Jacob Eldori plays the creature. They refer to him as the creature on IMDb. I always think of him as the monster. I think they are one and the same in that regard. But he's sort of like this very tall, thin, white um, creature with some scarring. And I thought that he actually was very almost ethereal in the way that they portrayed him. And I really, really did like that. I thought it was really effective, because I think it's hard when you talk about creating the creature. You're like, oh, what do we do? How do we do this? How do we make it look like something that is going to be really, really scary, and like sort of this other side of the human experience, right? Where we're thinking about um, when we think about Frankenstein's monster, right? We think about the character that does that with the big square head. That is sort of one of the common ways that it's portrayed in sort of film and comics and things like that. But I think actually taking him, stripping him down to like the bear, like to almost into a really human figure. And in some ways I was thinking, good Lord, it almost as if he is human. He looks so human. He's just very, very, very pale. And clearly he's very, very large. Even in the novel, he's depicted as an 8 foot large person, and he's very large in this movie as well. Very tall. He's actually quite thin and quite skinny, but that actually doesn't go necessarily against the way that Mary Shelley did depict him. So I want to talk about some of the differences that I found in the movie. And one of them was that we have characters that don't exist in um, the Mary Shelley's novel. And one of them is this benefactor named Harlander, who is kind of strange in that he wants to take pictures of the bodies that Victor is trying to animate. And he also pimps his sister Elizabeth out, who happens to be brother William's fiance. And in the novel, William dies as a child. He's never engaged to anybody. He never lives long enough to be engaged. So it's sort of a strange and stark difference in the storyline itself. And then we find out in the novel, Frankenstein, although he has been referred to as Dr. Frankenstein, was actually a medical school dropout. He never made it through medical school. So in the movie, they have him, they don't even actually really say if he's a doctor or not, but he begins like the story sort of when they show him in the flashbacks, they begin with him at this sort of tribunal with these men who I guess we can assume are scientists or medical doctors. They don't even really say who these men are, and it's very loud. And there's this really bizarre and almost frightening scene where Victor animates a half torso, and the half torso, when he animates him with electricity of some kind, the figure is like talking, and then he throws an apple at it, and the figure catches it, and he's trying to prove that that this animation is more human. It's not some kind of just reaction that I, I don't even know. It's very confusing, and it's loud, and um, it's a strange scene that I found actually more confusing to the rest of the story than anything, because in the novel Victor creates this creature, the monster, in a workshop by himself. People don't know he's doing it. It actually affects his mental health greatly because he's sort of working on this at night by himself, trying not to be found. So the other thing is that the creature, the monster in the film, they've sort of made him immortal and otherworldly, but in the novel he's not. He's actually a creation born of man, not lightning. And the monster in the book, he doesn't have any quick healing abilities. He doesn't have like this immortal um, life. He's not meant to live forever, at least in the depiction and the end of the novel. And so that was so different. And I think at the heart of it, that's sort of the problem that I had with the movie, is because the heart of the movie is so different from the heart of Mary Shelley's novel. And so I really struggled with the depiction of that. Also, I found there's some like very strange soliloquies happening throughout this entire film that just almost just wander into the absurd. Like they're talking to another person, but they're not really talking or listening. They're like, "Oh, I'm so into insects and I love insects and insects make me happy and you don't know." And it's almost becoming Shakespearean, half doth now or la 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 kind of stuff. And I found that really like boring. I didn't find that interesting at all. And it just didn't feel like a movie where two people were talking. It was like, almost like lecturing you on what you're supposed to know. And I don't like films that do that. I don't like films that tell me what I need to learn from the film. That it's should be up to me to decide what the film is about. And so we have sort of that weird thing happening, and that I didn't really find work that well. And then there's some other kind of bizarre scenes. Like there's one at William's wedding where there's a window open. I think it's on the second floor, and Victor's in the room, and he just kind of does this thing where he's like at the window, like, and then the music starts, and it's like, oh no, he knows that the creature is here. And of course the creature is here, but I mean, it could have just been somebody who opened a window because it was warm in there. I don't know. I just didn't think that was, I was like, oh, okay, okay. Oh, all right, all right, all right. And then we have this depiction of Elizabeth who has no fear of this monster, even though he is, 8 foot tall and very pale and clearly not human. She just kind of jumps right into like being his bestie. And it has something to do with insects that she likes, I guess, that she has no fear of creatures. I didn't understand what that was at all. Another question I had was when Victor was trying to test the animation, the reanimation of this creature to create this creature, they went and took a man that they hung and brought him back to this tower and animated him. And then when they actually went to go create the actual creature, they had to go to like a war site where people were dead from the war, and then he picked body parts. And it's like, why didn't he just go back and get a hung man? Like he didn't need to go to this war site and pick people, like pick body parts. And he was like marking them in the field, and it was very, very strange. But one of the things I really disliked about this film is that sometimes it sort of moved into comic book movie territory. And for instance, there's a scene where He's going to animate the creature, turn him into his monster, and he has lightning rods. That's how he does it, through lightning. And they're in this huge tower creating this monster, and this tower is 25 stories high, roughly. I mean, at least 15 stories high, let's say, maybe more. And Victor is literally holding a lightning rod and climbing up this tower with one hand on a concrete tower. It's like not even physically possible. So why all of a sudden do they make Victor like this superhuman strength man that can climb a tower one-handed? It just felt like it was not something that could be done in the time period. And so I got really confused a lot in the movie. Like, I'm like, so is this a comic book version of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or is it supposed to be really set in 1818 like the actual novel is? Because some of the things that were occurring just would not be possible. He's not going to climb a tower and put a lightning rod up there. Also, why didn't he do that before the storm came? So that that was really problematic for me. And then I had a problem with the ending, which is so different from the novel. And in the novel, the creature, the monster, he runs off to die in a funeral pyre of his own making. Like, that is his intent. Victor is dead. He's decided, okay, I am done. I don't want to be in this world anymore. He has human feelings. And in the movie, he also has some human feelings, but it's first of all, there's like this strange sort of fight between Victor and the monster, in which they start calling each other father and son. And then there's some lecturing about how we're supposed to take away whatever it is we're supposed to take away about who the real monster is. And I didn't like that. It felt very lectury, and it felt totally out of the blue. Like, now you're calling him your son and he's calling you father. It was bizarre at best. But then he comes out, the creature comes out, monster, and he pushes this stuck boat off, and then he kind of looks into the sun and closes his eyes, and he's smiling. And you're supposed to, I guess, I mean, I don't know if he was supposed to become human at that point or just starting to feel human, because he's really human throughout the film. If you pay close attention, he, learns language, he has feelings, he wants to be a part of society, wants to be loved. And it's just very, very unsettling how different they were. And unfortunately for me, it just wasn't a film that worked. And I know, like I said, my son really enjoyed it, and he had never read the book. So uh, perhaps if that kind of thing doesn't bother you, I left the movie feeling very confused about what the movie was supposed to be. Was I watching a sci-fi flick? Was I watching a gothic horror movie that happened, and they kind of were adding supernatural elements that aren't necessarily something that would have been found in 1818? I found it very, very confusing. So that's my take on that one. Thank you so much for watching. If you want more content from us, listen to our audio podcast, the Made for TV Movie Club podcast, on your favorite podcast app. You can also find us on our socials, including Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Just search for the Made for TV Movie Club podcast, and we will see you next time in the clubhouse.